Imagine this. You're about 200,000 miles from Earth, and your spacecraft is failing. That's the reality for the crew of Apollo 13. Meet astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes. These three men were the embodiment of courage and determination. They were tasked with the Apollo 13 mission, which was to be the third mission to land on the moon. Lovell, a seasoned astronaut, was the commander. Swigert, the command module pilot, was a last-minute addition to the crew, replacing Ken Mattingly, who was exposed to the German measles. Hayes, the lunar module pilot, was on his first spaceflight. The crew launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida on April 11, 1970. The mission started off smoothly, with the spacecraft entering the moon's gravitational influence just 2 days later. But then, 56 hours into the mission, while the crew was performing a routine stir of the spacecraft's oxygen tanks, an explosion occurred. The explosion resulted in a critical failure of the service module's systems. The spacecraft's life-supporting systems were compromised, and the mission's primary objective of landing on the moon was immediately aborted. Instead of a lunar landing, the mission had now turned into a survival story. The astronauts were facing a life-threatening situation. Their craft was severely damaged, and they were losing life-supporting resources like oxygen and power rapidly. But in the face of such adversity, the crew did not lose hope. They stayed calm, collected, and focused, working with Mission Control in Houston to troubleshoot their problems and find a solution. And so the words, "Houston, we have a problem," came to be. It was not a call of defeat, but a statement of fact and a request for assistance. It marked the beginning of one of the most dramatic episodes in space exploration history. So, with a malfunctioning spacecraft and dwindling resources, the crew of Apollo 13 had to find a way back home. Back on Earth, NASA's Mission Control was scrambling to find solutions. As Apollo 13 soared through the uncharted void of space, the lifeline tethering the crew to home was a group of individuals clad in short-sleeved shirts and ties, their eyes glued to the monitors flashing with data. This was Mission Control, the nerve center of NASA's operations, led by the indomitable flight director Gene Kranz. In the wake of the explosion that crippled the spacecraft, the mission's objective swiftly pivoted from lunar landing to the safe return of the astronauts. The stakes were sky-high. Kranz and his team were racing against time, grappling with a trifecta of challenges. The spacecraft was losing heat rapidly, the power was dwindling, and the life-supporting systems were critically compromised. Every decision, every solution had to be precise, for there was no room for error in the unforgiving expanse of space. The broken heat shield was a ticking time bomb. It was designed to protect the spacecraft from the searing heat of re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. But with it compromised, the crew faced the stark possibility of being incinerated before they could reach home. The team at Mission Control, however, refused to surrender to despair. They threw themselves into the task, running simulations, testing theories, and exploring every feasible option. Then there was the power shortage. Apollo 13 was running on fumes, with just enough energy to keep the life support systems running. The spacecraft had to be powered down to conserve energy, a maneuver fraught with risk. Yet the team at Mission Control executed it flawlessly, ensuring the survival of the crew. The challenges were formidable, the pressure immense. But through it all, Mission Control held firm. They worked around the clock, their collective minds focused on a single objective, bringing the crew of Apollo 13 home. Despite the odds, the team at Mission Control refused to give up, embodying the spirit of the phrase, "Failure is not an option." In the face of adversity, they demonstrated an unyielding resolve, a testament to the indomitable spirit of mankind. For them, failure was indeed not an option. As the world watched, the crew of Apollo 13 executed a critical engine burn. In the cold, dark expanse of space, away from the comforts of home, 3 astronauts found themselves in a situation that would test the limits of their courage, skill, and the very technology that had brought them there. Their mission, which was originally to land on the moon, had now become a desperate bid for survival. The crew had to perform a manual engine burn, a delicate and risky maneuver that was to adjust their trajectory and set them on a course back to Earth. The margin for error? Virtually non-existent. The engine burn was a tense moment. It was a make-or-break situation, literally. If they burned too long, they would be hurtling towards Earth too fast, making re-entry impossible. Burn too short, and they would remain stranded in space, doomed to orbit the Earth until their life support ran out. This wasn't the end of their troubles, though. Once they had successfully adjusted their course, they had to prepare for re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. This was a process fraught with danger under normal circumstances. But Apollo 13 was damaged. An explosion had torn through the service module, and there was uncertainty about whether the heat shield, crucial for their survival during the scorching re-entry, had survived. The crew and ground control had no way of knowing whether the shield was intact until they were in the midst of re-entry, in those heart-stopping moments when radio contact would be lost due to the intense heat enveloping the capsule. It was a gamble, a roll of the dice with their lives hanging in the balance. With a successful burn and a carefully calculated re-entry path, all that was left was the perilous descent back to Earth. The crew of Apollo 13 had turned a potential disaster into a successful failure. Their mission to the moon had been aborted, but their courage and ingenuity in the face of adversity had won them a different kind of victory. They had survived. In the final moments, the world held its breath. The voyage of Apollo 13 had reached its climax. The astronauts, once stranded in the unforgiving void of space, now faced the fiery test of re-entry. The command module, their tiny lifeboat, was hurtling towards Earth at a speed of 25,000 miles per hour. It was a moment of high stakes, with the heat shield being the thin line between life and death. It was designed to withstand the extreme temperatures that would be generated as the module sliced through the Earth's atmosphere. Any failure at this point would result in a catastrophic end. As the module entered the atmosphere, it was enveloped in a fiery plasma. This caused a communication blackout which lasted for a nerve-wracking 3 minutes. For those on Earth and for the astronauts themselves, it was a period of deafening silence and agonizing uncertainty. Would the heat shield hold? Would the command module survive the intense heat and pressure? Then, out of the silence, came the crackle of a radio transmission. The command module had survived re-entry, but their journey was not over yet. The module, now a glowing ember against the vast backdrop of the ocean, was heading for Splashdown. The parachutes deployed, gently slowing the descent of the module, guiding it towards the waiting arms of the Pacific Ocean. As the module kissed the water, a wave of relief washed over Mission Control and the rest of the world. The crew of Apollo 13 was safe. The recovery teams quickly moved in, retrieving the astronauts and their lifeboat from the ocean. The cheers and celebrations were not just for the return of the astronauts, but also for the triumph of human ingenuity and the indomitable spirit of survival. Against all odds, the crew of Apollo 13 had returned home, turning a potential disaster into a successful failure. The story of Apollo 13 is a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. This tale of survival unravels in the cold, unforgiving expanse of space, where 3 brave astronauts found themselves in a life-threatening situation, 250,000 miles away from home. Faced with a critical system failure, the crew and ground control's collective resourcefulness, determination, and unyielding spirit were their only hope. Their survival hinged on a series of critical decisions, each one as crucial as the last. From repurposing materials for a carbon dioxide filter to executing a near-perfect manual course correction, every choice was a step towards survival. Despite the odds, the crew of Apollo 13 returned safely to Earth, proving that even in the harshest of circumstances, human will can triumph. In the face of adversity, the Apollo 13 mission reminds us that with teamwork, creativity, and determination, even the most dire situations can become stories of survival.